We begin this segment of the program with the case of the Senate ranged against one of its own, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. The dust, of course, still metaphorically settling after a week in which the senator versus the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio's story, sucked up great gobs of political oxygen in Nigeria, raising all kinds of issues from disregarding court orders to potential chauvinism, possible misogyny, and the protection of women's rights in Nigeria. Well, let's get the perspectives of our guest analysts on this and the other news and issues of the week. And I'm suitably delighted to say that I'm joined now in the studio by the current affairs analyst and Dean of the School of Postgraduate Studies at Bayes University, Abuja, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, by the public policy analyst and development expert, Kaka, and in our off-site studio, I'm also joined by the legislative consultant and public policy analyst, Chibuzo Okereke. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let me start with you, Professor Adeniyi. Good to see you again. It's been a while, but I know you've been busy.
Thank you very much.
How big a deal do you think this case is, coming as it is in the context of the Senate and its president and the allegations surrounding it of sexual harassment?
Okay, thank you, Charles. But just for the record, happy to be referred to as simply Professor of Communication, Bayes University. I've stepped down as Dean, just for the record.
Well, that's rather unfortunate, isn't it?
No, it's fine, you know. Yeah, and of course, I'm not sure it's a big deal anyway. The controversy that transpired in the Senate is one of the things that could happen around political circles where we have politicians of different who's, different interests conflicting. And of course, sometimes some of these crises can be steeped in ego, in pride, and nerves can easily be frayed, you know, when politicians play here. What happened in the Senate, it took our attention, no doubt, captured our imagination. But of course, I don't believe that it will go too far. Yes, there are court cases, there's a suspension, and there are issues of women's rights and all such things happening. But because it is politicians that are acting here, I imagine that in no distant time, it will be resolved, you know. There might be some high-level reconciliation, some high-level intervention, and once more, it will become a thing of the past. We cannot definitely avoid this kind of entertaining distractions every once in a while. But while the distractions will keep coming, you know, we shouldn't, like I always like to say, forget the bigger picture of good governance. And of course, focusing on the primary mission of the National Assembly, where the Senate is prime. And what is it? Appropriation, legislation, and the performance of oversight function, you know, in the best way possible towards the growth and development of Nigeria.
Okay, let me come to you, Kaka. What about the fact that the Senate appeared to defy a court order, an order that was served as a substituted order through the office of the clerk? That order restrained the Senate from going ahead with the hearing. I mean, why do you think they proceeded in apparent defiance of that order?
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles, for having me again. Actually, it's very, very unfortunate, and it's a dangerous trend to defy a court order. And it was duly served, and you know, and a lot of people have confirmed that it was duly served. So it is a dangerous trend for a sitting judge to issue an order, and for lawmakers to break that order. The whole process of what happened at the National Assembly is needless distraction, as well as the integrity now of the Senate as an institution. The integrity and the sanctity of that institution is damaged without doubt. And this happened during a foreign parliamentary visit, who happened to be at the National Assembly at that time. Very, very embarrassing. So Nigeria is embarrassed, no doubt. And this is a very serious allegation by Mr. Charles. And if such an allegation is made by a female senator against the presiding officer, what is expected of natural justice to avoid any conflict of interest is for the presiding officer to step down. Let the case be heard, but from the way things that took place, apart from the apparent disregard to the court order, the Senate is becoming something else. It's becoming a dangerous trend that they're taking right now. And at one point, the Senate president himself apologized to Senator Natasha. And this allegation is a very serious allegation, of sexual harassment coming from one of its members. All senators are supposed to be equal, just one among equal that becomes the Senate president. So this is very, very dangerous. It's the trend that we are going through is the loyalty of senators should be to the Constitution of Nigeria, not to an individual, regardless of how powerful he is. Right. But I'm happy that the Villa has actually gotten involved.
That's the presidential villa.
The presidential villa has gotten involved in solving the problem because it's an embarrassment to the Nigeria, an embarrassment to our image. I remember during the 6th and the 7th Senate, and as well as even the last 9th Senate, led by former Senate President Ahmed Lawan and David Mark, there was professionalism, there was integrity, there was decorum. We don't see this kind of scandals. So I don't know what is happening. And this is actually not the first time that women are accusing the Senate president of sexual harassment.
So the upshot is that there needs to be an investigation.
There needs to be an investigation. Right. You should have allowed that to happen.
Right. Okay. Let me come to you. Let me come to you in our off-site studio, Chubuzo Okereke. You are, of course, a legislative consultant, so you've got the inside track on what happens in the National Assembly and the way things work. I mean, the Ethics Committee, which did not hear from Senator Natasha Uduaghan, proceeded to suspend her without giving her the benefit of a hearing, but chose to see her case from the perspective of technicalities, which they say she violated. I mean, how significant and important are those technicalities?
Well, thank you very much. I don't think there's no technicality at all. The workings of the legislature and indeed the institutional design of the legislature is what I think Nigerians should pay more attention and understand better. There is nothing about technicality in the observance of the rules of the Senate or indeed any other legislative chamber. The rules of the Senate is issued pursuant to Section 60 of the Constitution that gives the Senate, the National Assembly, powers to regulate its own procedure. So it's a subsidiary legislation that guides every member of the Senate. And the moment you take oath of office and allegiance as a senator of the Federal Republic, the part of the privileges of your office is that a copy, in the case of Senate, of that red book is handed in to you. And precisely Order 6 prescribe procedure for allocation of seats and rearrangement of seats. And indeed, even the sitting arrangements in the Senate or in the House of Rep, unlike other arms of government, is designed in a special way such that there is eyes. The majority sits on the right of the presiding officer, where the head of the maize that bears the symbol of Federal Republic of Nigeria is, signifying majority party sitting position, while that of the minority party sits in the left and the tail of the maize. And these are symbolism and very significant. Now, Nigerians must also understand, and I'm speaking as a professional, not defending anybody or any party. In the issue that the Senate Committee on Ethics entertained was the breach of rules of the Senate by distinguished Senator Natasha in her refusal not just to sit in the seat assigned to her, which was done in observance to the rules, irrespective of whatever challenges you have. The rules of the Senate prescribes that you must obey certain procedures and practices. And in any case, you have to be in order to also raise a point of order. So that issue that happened on the 20th was the matter of breach of privilege, now raised the next legislative day, that was referred to the Committee on Ethics. Now, the Committee on Ethics was constituted, and of course, we have to also know, by the internal workings of the National Assembly, committees on public accounts, committees on ethics and privileges, and public petitions are chaired by opposition party members, not the ruling party, obviously to ensure there is a level of accountability that is not influenced by political arrangement. And we have to also know that it is not the exclusive preserve of the Senate President to appoint committees and chairmen. However, that is done in consultation with a committee called Selection Committee. These are the workings they have to do. Now, it is not compulsory for a senator to appear before a committee that is investigating he or she. If you choose not to appear, it's immaterial. It will not stop that committee from taking evidence, whether documentary evidence or what have you, from other people. And that was what was done. The case of sexual harassment against the president of the Senate, the petition for that has been resubmitted by the distinguished senator herself, and on the 6th of March, that petition was referred to the Committee on Ethics. So that matter has not been entertained. The matter that was entertained was the issue of breach of order of the Senate, which under Order 66, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the order of the Senate had prescribed the punishment, including the Legislative House Powers and Privileges Act, on what the punishment should be. Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, thank you for that. And you've got the knowledge and the experience of working in the National Assembly yourself. Although for a lot of people, they smell a rat, basically. I'm sure we'll be picking apart this case as the days go by, because the issue, as Kaka said, does not appear like it's going to die away anytime soon. Now let's move on to Dr. Doyin Okupe, and it was with deep remorse that we received the news of his death, which emerged in the early hours of this morning. He was at various times Special Assistant on Media and Publicity to President Olusegun Obasanjo, Senior Special Assistant on Public Affairs to President Goodluck Jonathan, and was also the former Director General of the Peter Obi presidential campaign. And of course, he was a medical doctor. Today we got the news that Mr. Okupe had passed on after battling a serious illness suspected to be cancer. Let me come to you, Professor Adeniyi. Reactions to his death are, of course, pouring in. How do you assess the tributes to him?
Well, not unexpected. Okupe, no doubt, was a great man. I knew him personally, as a journalist covering the National Republican Congress, a political party, one of the political parties midwifed by former President Ibrahim Babangida. Back then in Lagos in the early 90s, he was the party spokesman, a friend of journalists, no doubt. He was a medical doctor, had a flourishing hospital in Obalende, but he could very well pass as a trained journalist, very affable, very convivial, always very vibrant and boisterous. He has left a very good legacy, and of course, in recent times, apart from being a presidential spokesman, in recent time, he was very prominent in the Labour Party. Yes, again, he found some level of confidence in President Tinubu, and he's that kind of person that is never hypocritical, very open-minded, very bold, courageous in his views, and he contributed, no doubt, in the shaping of the Nigerian political process, But like all mortals, there will be a time where we'll have to exit this planet Earth. Okupe has paid, Okupe's time has come, no doubt, and of course, he has obeyed the call of God. But the good thing is that he has left a very good legacy in memory. He made that cut, 3 calls and 10, the biblical age, a ripe age, no doubt, but we'll have still desired that, we'll still desire that he will have been around some more, but who knows? Only heavens know better than the rest of us. The last thing I can say in the circumstance is that may his soul rest in peace, may his memory be a blessing to his loved ones.
Indeed, and Abba Kaka, Peter Obi, with whom he worked as Director General of his campaign organization during the 2023 presidential election, described him as someone who deeply desired a better Nigeria. I suppose that is a good way to see him, as something of a patriot.
Indeed, actually our condolence goes to the family of Dr. Okupe. Indeed, he has served Nigeria well. He served 2 presidents and worked for 1 presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi. And Peter Obi's description of Mr. Okupe is an excellent description. As a matter of fact, he is a good journalist, a trained doctor, and he's bold and courageous. And he always talks from principles, regardless of whose ox is, God. But all the time, he stands for the truth. He always looks for the truth, and he's.
And he was an evangelist as well.
Okay, he was also an evangelist as well.
Indeed.
And then he came back to the current president as well, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and he worked closely with him. And he's a very, very good man, and he's somebody that is respected across board by all Nigerians.
Thank you for that. And Chibuzo Okereke in the off-site studio, would that be the best way to remember him, or were there other strands to his character that you think better serve as an epitaph, as briefly as you can?
Yeah, thank you. I think first I send my condolences to his family and indeed to Nigerians. And like your question, he was a role model to many young journalists. They looked up to him. He was a brilliant intellectual who scripted and set high standard and image making of the presidency that up to today people still make reference to that. And that stood him tall as a very great role model. I know a number of young journalists who worked under him, and like you described in your intro about being called the attack dog of the government because he put out himself to explaining policy and making people understand indeed the position of government on a number of issues. So we'll remember him, and his legacy will continue to be an inspiration to many.
Thank you very much indeed for that, and thank you to both you, Professor Adeniyi and Abba Kaka, for remembering him as fondly as you did. Now, this week, General Olusegun Obasanjo, 2-time president and commander-in-chief, turned 88. He stepped down in 2007 as the longest ruling leader Nigeria has ever known, and the first to govern the country twice as military head of state and as elected president. For more than a decade, his administration's reform policies reached deep into the lives of the Nigerian people, giving so much cause for hope after decades of military rule. Professor Adeniyi, would it be fair to say that under President Obasanjo's watch, Nigeria became once again a symbol and a signal to not just Nigerians, but the rest of Africa?
No doubt. He's one of the greatest politicians, one of the greatest persons to emerge from this country. In a way, the history of Nigeria or the story of Nigeria will be incomplete, without the role that President Olusegun Obasanjo is playing. It's quite enigmatic. You remember, he's also the longest serving president of this country. If you combine his military experience with his civilian adventure, with his civilian foray into Nigeria's presidency. putting the two together, he comes as the longest serving. And of course, as a civilian president, it was quite remarkable. He brought quite a number of sea changes that we still remember today. He was a reformist, very courageous. Again, not afraid to take decisions, and sometimes you also wish that he had some more opportunity, to be around. He may have his fault, no doubt, like every human being, but he's one person that Nigeria will never forget in a hurry. And he's a man of many parts, not just a politician, but an intellectual, a soldier, and at 88 he's still kicking, still looking very strong. It can also be theatrical and dramatic in many ways, an entertaining person, and somebody that is often a delight to listen to and to watch, on account of his multi-perspective, multi-dimensional dispositions. So we wish him well, and we hope that God Almighty will continue to grant him good health, to be around some more, so that the nation will also benefit from his wisdom. Internationally as well, he's one of the most remarkable, most popular, most respected and reputable Nigerian leaders, amongst a few others, but he stands out, no doubt, often present at different fora, and this is going to continue for a long time to come because of his commitment, to values, credibility and the maintenance of integrity, even though you can still fault him in areas, but you cannot discount his salutary role that he has played in the past and that he still continues to play. So it's okay to just wish him happy birthday, long life, and continuous prosperity.
Right, okay. I suspect there are many people who will agree with that assessment. Abba Kaka, as briefly as you can, because we've only got like 2 or 3 minutes and we've got to go to Chibuzo Okereke. How do you remember the Obasanjo years? Professor Adeniyi talked about him being very bold. I mean, he's one of the few former Nigerian leaders who continues to watch the political scene very closely and to criticize those who are in office.
Yes, indeed. He is actually a detribalized leader. He's a statesman who believes in one Nigeria. And as a matter of fact, you have to give it to him because he has set so many records. He's the first military ruler in Africa to hand over to civilians without contesting. He's the first to set up EFCC, which I really, I'm an anti-corruption crusader myself. And since Nuhu Ribadu took over that time, you know how it is. So we wish him happy birthday. And he is somebody who is bold, who is respected internationally, and who means well for the country, unlike other leaders that we have. He is really, really respected. And I will just say, Baba, happy birthday, happy 88th birthday.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping that brief. And a final word from you, Chibuzo Okereke. How do you remember the Obasanjo years?
Well, congratulations and happy birthday to a president we call the field marshal. I mean, many African countries today remember him for being responsible for intervening and bringing peace in Kenya, in Sierra Leone, and many other countries. And one of the most important legacy we remember him for on his birthday is setting up the Presidential Library, an institutional memory where today young people from all across Africa and Nigeria go to interact with policy instruments and other inspirational material. So congratulations to him. He's working to inspire a lot of young people. He's remembered as a president who has written the most open letters to sitting president, and that alone shows that he's forthright. He wants things to be done the right way.
Okay.
So may God continue to give him long life and health.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. On that note, I want to thank the legislative consultant, public policy analyst, Chibuzo Okereke, who you heard from just there. And of course, before him, the current affairs analyst and professor of communications at Bayes University, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, and the public policy analyst and development expert, Abba Kaka. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for joining us and bringing your brilliant insights into the conversation. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.